Welcome to Instruction Discussion, our weekly look at the latest topics and trends in education affecting schools here on Long Island and schools around the world. Whether you're a teacher, parent, or student, listen for tips and strategies to help you navigate the educational landscape. There's a bell. It's time to start today's Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, I'm Kevin Boston Hill, and welcome to Instruction Discussion, where each week we will examine a recent trend or development in education and its impact on Long Island. Every so often, I like to present information that our listeners can use for their own personal development. In the days and months coming out of the pandemic, people have been looking for ways to express their feelings, chronicle their experiences, or maybe find an additional source of revenue. Today's show will help with all of these. Today's guest spent decades as a writing professor and fiction teacher for Gotham writers in New York City. He has written character-driven novels, short story collections, and he is an award-winning film writer and director. What better person to show us how to write that novel that lies inside of us? Let's welcome writing professor and award-winning author of the new book, Night and Its Longings, Philip Chioffari, to Instruction Discussion on 90.3 WHPC.
Yes, I'm happy to be here.
There are a lot of people who, I guess, wanted to find some way to kind of chronicle their experiences with the pandemic and being shut in and everything else that kind of goes along with it, that's associated with it, but they may not know exactly how to get started. So I guess my first question to you would be, is it hard to be a writer, and where would one begin on that journey?
Well, yeah, I don't know anymore. I don't think so much anymore about it being hard or easy. It's something I've been doing since I was 9 years old when I wrote cowboy stories and mystery stories. I was too young to know anything about love, so I didn't write love stories yet. But and so it just became a part of my day, a part of my week, a part of my life. So I don't think too much about the difficulty of it. But do I believe it's possible? To be for every one of us or most of us to become writers? Sure. I think I have always believed that we all have at least one novel inside of us, or one book, because our life's journey is the plot, is the story. And I think if one is interested in writing, and so many writers, their first book is what we call autobiographical. That even if it's fiction, it is very closely based on their own experiences. So, with that as an assurance, I'd say sure. I think it's possible. We each have it within us, and the question is just getting started. And I can suggest some things. For that.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the place that a lot of people would want to know, because like you said, everybody has a story within them, story that they can write about to get out. But I guess the difficulty that some people have are twofold. One is how to get started, and two would be, what do I do if I feel that I'm not always grammatically correct in my writing or in my speech? So how do I work on it? But let's attack the first question first, which is, how do you get started?
Sure. Well, if you're writing close to your life or writing based on events of your life, I think one thing I can suggest, and I do suggest it in my classes when I'm teaching, is make a list of the most important or significant events in your life. That is, those times, those moments, those events, which when you went through them, really changed you in some way, had a strong impact, and and so that they were life altering in some way. And even if you make a list of 2, 3, 4, 5 of those things, and then an easy way to start is to pick one, again, something, that life-altering moment or event or incident that happened, for which you were different afterwards, and just tell us what happened. You just start by writing what happened. that day or that hour or that weekend or that week. Um, and and using that as kind of a core, you can then take us, go back and show us what led up to that moment, that event, and then you can work on the other end and show us what resulted, what were the consequences of that event. That in itself will give you the structure, the basic structure of a story. So you have a beginning, you have a middle, which we would say is the event itself, and then we have the ending, which are the consequences of that event.
And it
So
doesn't
that's
always,
one.
the ending doesn't always have to end in, and they all lived happily ever after, right?
Exactly. Yes. Well, that certainly has not been true in my life, but so I says yes. I mean, that's the beauty and the pain of human existence, right? Is that there's this absolute beauty at one moment, and the next moment we're in dire pain or sorrow or grief, and often the two almost coexist. If we're at if we're experiencing something wonderful, or our life is going perfectly, well, maybe our brother or sister is struggling with disease or some other emotional problem. That's the complexity and beauty of life, and that's why strictly happy endings, while nice and in some cases certainly appropriate, don't always tell the whole truth. The truth a little bit more subtle, subtle, I would say, than that.
So how therefore now we get that part, we did the first part as far as putting down the list of those moments that are important to us, that are those life-changing moments that we kind of that stick with us. So we got that, and we choose one to begin with. So how do we, I guess, continue the writing? We design the outline and whatnot, and we know what's going to be our intro. We know what our body is going to look like and what the event is going to look like, how to describe it. But what if we feel that we don't have the expansive enough vocabulary to be able to truly bring that story to life, and so that it doesn't sound boring and mundane and just Joe Friday-ish, just the facts, ma'am, type of thing? How do we boost that up if we don't automatically have that strong vocabulary ourselves?
Yes, well, and that's something that takes time and effort, but it is something that we can develop, and we can develop it by reading, particularly if in this case one is writing a novel, or an autobiography, either one, by reading in that genre, reading other novels, reading other autobiographies, and choosing writers whose writing style appeals to you, and then reading it slowly and examining, how the writer is trying to figure out how the writer is getting the effect he or she is getting. And I'm a big believer in rereading things, or even if I have a favorite movie, I might watch it for a week straight. I might watch it every night for a week, and I just study it because. And the same thing with looking at a chapter or another writer's book. The first time we go through it, we're preoccupied by just understanding what's going on and what happens. But the second time you read through it, you already know that. So your mind is looking at other things. And that's where you can say, okay, look at how this sentence was put together, or look at the words he or she used to create this paragraph, or to have this emotional effect on me. I'm laughing, or I'm feeling sorrow. Well, let me look at the language and try to figure out exactly how those words were arranged and chosen to produce that effect. And that's something most of us don't do, right? I mean, we go to the movies or read a book and, oh, fine, then we're on to the next thing. But if you're trying to develop a writing style and improve your writing style, that's one sure way to do it. And it's like examining what you've read. It's not simply reading it, enjoying it, and putting it aside. No, it's thinking about it and trying to see how the writer made you laugh, how the words were used or arranged in a certain way that you had this particular emotional response. And now, of course, you can't do this in a week or in a month. I mean, it takes time.
Yeah.
But if one really wants to do it, it can be done. Also, there are, as you mentioned earlier, there are writing classes. I mean, I teach at Gotham. We have in-person classes. They have online classes in writing, in which you get the feedback of a published writer. You get the feedback from other members of your class. You get to see other members of the class and how their writing is, and that's the way we learn. The more we're exposed to language, the better we get at it.
I was going to say that because I think even when we're young children, the way that we get that first grasp of vocabulary and of speaking is by being immersed among other people who are speaking around us. So by the time we actually enter kindergarten, we already have a wealth of knowledge of vocabulary just based on what we've been exposed to as children. And of course, as we get older, the more people that we're around, the more reading we do, the more things that we are exposed to, the larger our vocabulary, more expansive it becomes still. But I just want to go back 1 second to the analogy used as far as the movie watching, because I was just thinking about this the other day, how there are certain movies that you can watch over and over and over again, but when you watch them the third, fourth, eighth, 10th time, you always find something different in them than the first time. The first time you watch it is purely for entertainment value. But the more you watch it, the entertainment may still be there, but it's not the primary focus for you anymore, as you pointed out, because you've already been there. So now you're focusing on other little things that may have happened. Maybe it's the placement of the characters or how the director zoomed in on the face of one character at a pivotal moment, or even the dialogue between characters that's happening, or even just product placement. So you don't necessarily pick up those things the first couple of times around, but the more you watch it, that's when you start picking up all those little pieces. Then you realize just how great a movie truly is because of all the other things. And I guess the same can be said for books. The more you read them, the more you pick up on those little things of structure and sentence structure and paragraph development and even chapter development for inside books. And all those things contribute to the enjoyment of the reader.
Yeah, absolutely. What you're describing is we're plunging into the depths, and the movies that we do want to watch over and over again, or the books that we want to read over and over again, the reason is because we recognize that there is a lot of depth there. Things are not happening always close to the surface and on the surface. There's something, there's more that's going on beneath the surface. And so each time we go back and look at it or reread it, we are seeing those subtleties, those nuances that are too subtle to grasp when we're watching it for the first time. And exactly what you described. I mean, it could be the way a character turns her head at a certain moment that we just took it for granted the first time. We didn't think very much about it, but in examining it closely, we see that turn of the head signaled some emotional thing inside her, or triggered something inside her, or as a response to something. And so we're talking about subtleties and nuances, which are really important, and which I would say, in general, most readers and most film goers certainly don't get on the first viewing. But I wanted to also mention something that you said before, because I wanted to encourage certainly parents to immerse, to use your word, to immerse children in language when they're young, and that is simply by reading to them. My parents read to me from the time I could open my eyes, and once I could read, then I just picked it up, and I then chose the books and I did the reading, and that stayed with me all through childhood. And I think what I've noticed with students is that many of the more successful students, I'll say to them, "Did your parents read to you when you were a kid?" And they'll say yes. I don't have statistical evidence, but
Yeah.
I just believe that it really does make a difference in terms of how we express ourselves.
No, it does make a difference. I mean, I'm educated by trade, so I definitely see the effects of reading at an early age and reading to your children at an early age. Because, like I said, once they actually enter kindergarten with that particular a certain level of vocabulary and just knowing how to sound out words on their own from listening to how they're sounded out in the first place. But
Sure. Yeah.
But I wanted to also ask you, you mentioned about usually that first book is autobiographical in nature. So it's about some story or some experience that somebody had. How would somebody go about adapting that to make sure that it's something that the readers would actually want to read? Because, again, it was something that was important to you, but how do you know that it's going to be interesting to the masses who are going to pick up your book, purchase your book, and actually want to read it?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. And it goes right to the heart of the matter, I think. Because when you're writing your story, what's at the heart of that? Well, what's at the heart of all literature and all movies and all plays is, what does your main character want, and what is in the way of your character getting that? And so stories on the simplest level are about a character struggling to get what's missing in his or her life. That's the outline of all stories. And they can either get it at the end, so that would be the happy ending, I guess, or they cannot get it, or what is more common and what happens most of the time is simply that it's a combination of things, that maybe the character does not get exactly what he or she thought they wanted, but it's something that they need, something that actually improves their life, even though they wouldn't have thought that at the beginning. So I think if that's the common ground between what each of us are writing and the rest of the world, to answer your question, that's the connection. It's because we all want something. There's never a moment in our lives, 24 hours a day, when we don't want something. We might want to be left alone. We might want to just go to sleep. But wanting, desire is what drives our lives. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning. It gets us through the day. And that's the common element that we all have. And that's what we recognize in the stories that we read. Okay, this person is struggling for this. May not be exactly my struggle, but I recognize it as a struggle, and I'm engaged in that. I want to see what happens. That's the tension thing. Okay, well, what's going to happen? Is the character going to be able to navigate the world, the things that are fate, what fate throws at us, as opposed to our own inner demons, or the things that that prevent us from being happy. So I think that's the connection. That's what you can be sure. If you're telling a story about a struggle, and it's sincere and it's honest, it's going to resonate. People are going to be able to identify with it. And again, it's just something to think about when you read. But it's always about what a character wants and what they're doing to get it. That's the nuts and bolts of every story. And yeah.
You are listening to Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Kevin Boston Hill, and our guest today is writing professor and award-winning author of the new book, Night and Its Longings, Philip Chioffari. Is there such a thing as a set length of time to actually write a book? Because then you do get some people who think that, I have to write this book in 90 days or it's not going to get done. Or if they feel if it takes a year, that's way too long. So is there a guideline on how long it really should take to write a book?
No, again, that's a good question. It's not something that any aspiring writer should worry about. It's going to take as long as it takes you. I mean, it took Ralph Ellison, I don't know, it was 15 years, I think, to write Invisible Man. My first novel, Catholic Boys, that took me 10 years. Now I wasn't writing every day. I would write a draft, put it down, whatever, do something else, come back to it and back. That took me 10 years. The present one, Night and Its Longings, took me 4 years. So I've cut the time down somewhat. But no one really cares, except you,
right?
How long it takes. All that people care about is it a good story? Is it a story that makes me interested and makes me want to follow it, makes me want to read to the last page? That's the only thing that matters. So I think it's probably harmful to have preconceptions when you go in.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't expect to become a pro tennis player in a year. No, you start when you're 3, and maybe by the time you're 20, you're or 16 or 18, you're a pro. But so yeah, it takes time, and it takes everyone their own time. Okay. It's an individual thing.
And speaking of which, being your own time and it being an individual thing, I'm sure a lot of our listeners will want the answer to this question, if there is such an answer. And that's, how do you cure writer's block?
Well, a lot of writers don't even believe in writer's block. But when things are not, coming, and that you mentioned earlier in the program about COVID and the effect that had on our lives. Well, that certainly put a dent in my creativity. I didn't have any new ideas for 3 years. Fortunately, I had work that I had started before COVID that I could go back and work on. This novel, Night and Its Longings, as part of that. So I can tell you a few tricks that I use when I'm stuck. None of these helped during COVID, but usually they do help somewhat. Which is, I try to do something new, something different. I try to shake up my life in some way. Maybe I'll do something that I haven't done before. I'll expose myself to a new experience. Sometimes I'll take a trip for a couple of days, or a week, whatever. I'll go someplace else, someplace new. In other words, something to kind of, counterbalance the routine, the structure that we've set up for ourselves. Now, not everybody can take off and go away for a few days, but we can certainly find a new experience. And maybe that is simply taking a class or taking the class in a subject, that we're interested in, but we want to know more about, or putting ourselves in a situation where we meet some new people or different people. That's usually the way I do it. And the other thing is trying not to, worry over it, trying not to bemoan the fact, like what they always say about insomnia. The more you say to yourself, "I've got to get to sleep," the less chance you're gonna actually get to sleep. So I think it's the same kind of thing. It's just, okay, it will come. And the other thing I do is, I read. I watch movies. I go to plays. Things that I that might trigger, what somebody else is writing might trigger something in me and say, hey, I can do this and I can do it in a different way, or I can take this small aspect of this movie or this play or this book, and I can build my own story around it.
Let's get into Night and Its Longings for a moment, because you mentioned it took you 4 years to write it. So what drove you to write this particular story?
Again, an excellent question. And, I usually try not too much to think about it when I'm writing, but because I don't want to kind of, railroad myself, but, but certainly afterwards, I always go back and try to figure out what the impulse was. For me, it was night itself, particularly late night or, middle of the night. Those times when the world is, has receded. The external world has receded, and we're stripped away. We're kind of left with ourselves and who we are. And it came out of moments. I mean, it came out of moments where I would be lying awake, in the middle of the night, and you see the world differently at that time, because you don't have the hectic routine of your day life. You can kind of get beneath the surface and do I have the things I need? What's missing in my life? What more should I have? What more do I want to have? And how might I get there? So it was really the sense of night itself as an image that compelled me. And then kind of what I find is the ideas, for me, certainly do not come all packaged, neatly. And okay, I'm going to sit down and write this novel now that I have this idea. The ideas come in bits and pieces at different times and at different stages. Then I had this idea. I had in my mind this writer who lives in the village, in Greenwich Village, and he's pining over the one woman that he loved and lost, and then I don't know, days or weeks or months later, maybe then what if her husband came and asked him to help him find her? What would that be? And I thought, well, that's an interesting kind of premise, that the husband knows that he had an affair with the woman, and yet he still is desperate enough or whatever to come and ask for help in finding her. So it's built. The idea comes in layers and not all at once. It's like I always like the analogy of the 16-track recording. So it's not that everybody, the band and the singer and the background singers, they're all together at the same time and let's just do it. No, you might, okay, I've got a saxophone riff. Let me put that down, and then you maybe add a voice, and so forth. You build it so that you have a final complete piece. I hope that answers the question, but that the idea kind of comes in bits and pieces,
right?
And not always. This is what I want to stress for anybody who's interested in writing. Don't wait for it, the whole, okay, I've got this great idea and now I can write it. No, don't wait for that. Start with anything you have, a sentence, a character, a situation, an impulse.
We would certainly like to thank our guest today, writing professor and award-winning author of the new book, Night and His Longings, Philip Chioffari, for coming on to the show today.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me.
Once again, my name is Kevin Boston Hill, and thank you all for listening to Instruction Discussion, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.